everybody, welcome to the podcast. I am your host, Mike Mumford, and today I'm joined by my wife, Elizabeth Mumford, and our dear friend, Christine Brown. And together, we make up a small church planting team based out of Reno, Nevada. Today, we are excited because this is our first episode. We actually don't even know what this podcast is going to be called yet. We're still deciding. Maybe you can be helpful in that by emailing us at an email that we have yet to name as well. So we'll be...
Except it'll be prophetic at that point, because actually by the time we release the podcast, it will have a name.
Yes.
You, dear listener, know more than we do right now.
It's correct.
That's
You're
true.
from the future.
There we go.
We're only measly past people that don't know what happens in the future, but you know. And so we thank you for joining us today on our first episode. Today, we're just going to talk about what we hope to accomplish and what this podcast is going to be about and how we hope it serves you, our listeners. So thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoy it.
First, you would leave that music on a dissonant tone, wouldn't
Yes.
I did that very intentionally.
Oh, absolutely.
I just wanted to disrupt everybody's sense of equilibrium. How's your day, Elizabeth?
You know what? It's a day out of the book of 2020. So
Explain that.
Well, we are currently in Reno, Nevada. We are covered in smoke. Plans are changing. Work is changing. It's pretty crazy. It feels a little apocalyptic in many senses.
Right.
The news is a little bit earth-shattering every morning. I really need to change this habit that I have. Every morning I read the New York Times. I probably should stop doing that.
Scary stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're listening to this from the future, currently in 2020, it is the raging fires on the West Coast. And so it's raining ash from the sky as we speak. It's crazy. Christine, how's your day?
Oh boy. The smoke is not an exaggeration to say that it is depressing. It's suppressing. It's kind of suppressing our normal activities, suppressing plans, suppressing, our desires, what we'd want to do. I spend a ton of time outside and get so much joy from being outside, and it's really difficult to put that away and to be inside all the time. Mm-hmm. That being said, today was actually great.
Really?
Yes, today was great. Today was kind of, if today for Liz was a page out of 2020's playbook, I feel like today for me was a page out of hopefully 2021's playbook. It was a lot more hopeful. So I hosted a workshop about equity and diversity and cultural competence in the workplace. And it was great. A lot of people attended. I think a lot of good seeds were planted and a lot of thoughts provoked. So it was a good day.
Very cool.
A good day.
Very cool. I think before we really jump into the content of the podcast and what we're hoping to accomplish, it'd be good to just introduce ourselves a little bit. So I mentioned, obviously, in the introduction, our names. I'm Mike Mumford. Elizabeth Mumford's my wife. Christine Brown, our dear friend. We are a church planting team from Reno, Nevada. But I thought we'd just talk a little bit about, what we do and, what interests us and things like that. Elizabeth, you want to start?
Yes. My name is Elizabeth. You might know me as Liz. For work, I own a creative agency in Reno, Nevada, with some amazing people, also in Reno, Nevada, and across the West Coast. What I like to do in my free time, well, really, to be super honest, I don't feel like I have any free time right now.
True.
We have 2 children. We currently have a 5-year-old and a 3-year-old. And that's great, but I kind of feel like that is all my free time at the moment. But if I wasn't doing that, then I would be pretty creative. I am an artist and a musician by trade. And I like to ride bikes and ski and other fun things. I like to be outdoors. As far as kind of how I got to this place of having a conversation about Christian spirituality. Mm-hmm. I grew up as a Christian in a Christian household for the most part. I have parents here in Reno that are very involved locally in a church. super helpful. Also very intriguing for the conversations that I'm sure we will have. I remember being baptized at 9 years old, and I think I truly had genuine faith at that point as well. So, I don't know. I really cherish that. Cherish good parenting and my parents teaching me about Jesus from a young age. That's pretty much it, I guess. I currently have a sleeping deaf dog in my lap.
Yes, we have a deaf dog. She's so cute, though. The deafness amplifies the cuteness. Mm-hmm. Christine, why don't you talk a little bit about yourself and background?
So, yes, I'm Christine Brown. A lot of people know me as KB, and I like that. I think that that's fun, and I think that I will probably always be known as KB. At least I hope so. Anyways, so I'm the Director of Member Engagement at the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce. So that's a really fancy way of saying that my big job is to make sure that our members are taken care of, that the business community has resources that they need to survive, and that has been more of a service than ever these days with COVID and whatnot. And I love that. I love being able to go into work and serve in a meaningful way. Things that I like to do. There are a lot of things I like to do. I love being outside, hiking, swimming, just sitting outside when there's no smoke. I love food. I love wine and drink. Those things give me a lot of joy.
Glory, hallelujah.
And yeah, those are the only hobbies that are really coming to mind. I'm a musician as well. I do love music. Music is a big part of my life. Let's see, what else? Oh, also football.
What?
You didn't know this? Oh my goodness gracious.
I know we're not supposed to talk over each other, but what?
I love football. I do. I can't help myself. The 49ers literally broke my heart on Sunday. I don't want to talk about it.
Okay.
Anyways, so I became a Christian when I was 14 at a summer camp. Tale as old as time, song as old as rhyme.
Beauty and the Beast.
And honestly, God found me. There's a verse in the book of Romans, which is in the Bible, that talks about how at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly, and that has always struck me as the truth of the fact that God always gets his timing right. And I really believe that God got his timing right in my life, not just with his salvation, but also the idea and the truth that when we come to Jesus, we are adopted into a family, and I needed family at that time in my life. Things at home were really unstable. And I think in a lot of ways, I would not have survived or found my way if it were not for very specifically Christ's saving work and him putting me in a stable family that I found in the church at that time. And so, yeah, that's a little bit about my backstory.
Awesome. For my story, I currently am working as a pastor at a church in South Reno called Reno Christian Fellowship. And I've been a vocational minister for the past 10 years or so, a pastor for the past 7. I got saved when I was like 15 years old. And that was the moment that I knew that this is what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. It was like the gospel was so beautiful to me, and it just became so clear that was what I was going to do forever. So that's what I'm doing. That's what I'm still doing. That's what I've been trying to do ever since I was 15 years old, and that's what I hope to continue doing on until my old age.
Can I just make an interjection?
Yes.
This to me tells me we should probably be paying our student ministries pastors a whole lot more.
That's true.
Yes.
Good point.
Oh, yes.
Yep.
What is that, 9, 14, and 15?
Yeah. Yep. Young folks. Young
Just side
folks.
note.
Yeah, that is a great observation.
So my job has been to be a professional Christian for the past, 10 years, which is a weird balance to walk, It's something that is, it's a challenge, to be able to tell the difference between what I'm doing because it's my job and what I'm doing because it's my life. Talk about a work-life balance, right? It's like soul and profession differentiation. It's really hard to tell. But it's been crazy and fun and amazing. And I feel like God has really called our family in particular and us three to something that I'm really excited to see come to fruition. As far as hobbies go, I love to cook. I love to skateboard. I'm a 33-year-old dad that skateboards in my garage, doing kick flips and stuff.
Just in the garage.
Well, yeah, I don't want
Not
anyone to
taking
see
it to
me.
the streets.
No way. No, I don't want anyone to see me because I'm terrible at it. But it's like the only way I like to exercise is actually skateboarding. So it's what I do. So my next question for us, just to kind of continue to break the ice before we really jump in, is what was the last show you watched on Netflix, Christine?
This is where the clickbait comes in.
Okay.
That's a nod to Mike Birbiglia if anyone listens to his podcast. So I haven't really been watching a ton of Netflix. I guess technically, like a month or two ago, the last show I finished was Indian Matchmaking, but I'm not here to talk about that.
Okay.
What I've been watching lately on Hulu is Scrubs. And this is here we go. I don't know if anyone is ready to receive this, but this is the truth. Scrubs does not hold up.
I believe it.
I just need to let that land for a second. I feel like a bunch of people, especially 30-something white women, just in droves, just ran away. But hear me out. Hear me out. So Scrubs, I feel like it is just top to bottom, backwards and forwards, riddled with just misogyny and homophobia. And even though they're doing it in a funny way, like there are other shows that kind of that they expose things like that in people, but then they kind of have a redemptive arc to it. Instead, like there's nothing redemptive about it. It's just kind of like the jokes get made and then they never get resolved and there's never a lesson about them. It's just coursing through the entire show and it just makes you cringe, which I anticipated Michael's response to this, which I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I can hear Michael's brain thoughts, and his brain thoughts are saying, well, The Office is like that too.
I love cringy humor.
And that's the thing, is The Office kind of resolves it. Like, you almost feel like they're putting those moments on display in order to show you that this is not okay anymore. Whereas with Scrubs, it's just kind of there and it's allowed to land and it just sits there. And it's just funky and I don't like it.
Dr. Cox was always my favorite character in Scrubs.
Yeah.
Doesn't hold up though, does he?
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's why I bet.
Oh, no.
Elizabeth, last show you watched on Netflix?
Rescue Bots.
Rescue Bots Academy. Last show you watched, not happened to be present for while the children were watching.
That's the thing, is I don't know. I can't think. Can you answer that for me?
Probably.
Okay, what?
Last Dance, Michael Jordan.
That's not Netflix. I thought that was
That's
like
Netflix.
ESPN or something.
It is on Netflix.
Netflix.
It was on ESPN. It is on Netflix now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Then yes, that is the last thing I watched.
Tell me about your feelings about Michael Jordan.
I am impressed at a lot. I don't actually have a lot of feelings.
I feel like that show's just crazy nostalgic.
Yeah, well, without opening the can of worms, it has a lot of impact on my thoughts in the BLM conversation that's currently happening.
Yep.
So I do actually have a lot of thoughts on it, but that's like a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, we'll save that one.
Yeah.
We'll save that one. For me, The Last Dance was kept on reminding me of Space Jam the whole time. That's all I can see is Bugs Bunny trying to dunk on some alien monsters.
I still have never seen it.
Oh, it's so good.
I know,
Again?
guys. I failed.
It's so good.
I failed as an 80s, 90s kid.
I think it's on Hulu or some streaming service right now.
Leon just watched it.
Yeah, Space Jam. My last show that I watched on Netflix, can you guys guess?
Yeah.
Was The Office. I watched that show.
What?
I've been watching that show since it's come out, basically. I was late to the game, but then as soon as it was on like streaming services, it was just like, I just can't help myself.
My hat's off.
They're my real friends.
Wow.
All right. You guys ready to jump into the serious stuff?
Oh, yeah.
So, like we said at the beginning, we don't know exactly the name of this podcast yet, but we've been kicking around some concepts and some themes of some words. One of them is the word kindred. So, just wanted to go into that for a moment. There's been a burden, I would say, on me lately. That would be to welcome people who have otherwise felt unwelcomed into the conversation of faith and spirituality and Christian living.
Right.
And the concept of belonging kept cropping up in my mind as I was considering that. I want these people to feel like family. It's not just can they have something to say in the conversation, but can they feel unconditionally loved in the midst of that? Can they feel accepted, and can they feel celebrated and belonged in the midst of those things? I think about my family, and sometimes we have differences or we don't all think the same, but at the end of the day, I know I'm going to go to sleep and wake up the next morning absolutely loving my family. I had a conversation with my brother, and he was talking about how earlier that morning he had written a poem about kindred spirits, and that also had really captured my attention.
Right.
And that's when I felt like the concept clicked, that there is a need to connect the kindred spirits together to have a conversation. The people who are like-minded, or people who want to have a conversation together, the people who can, at the end of the day, even if they disagree, love each other, accept each other, and celebrate one another.
Yeah, and I think if we're thinking about guardrails with the conversation, I think one thing, at least that came to my mind in thinking through that concept, was not wanting to seek sameness, because I think a lot of us have experienced that, almost this elevation of sameness or homogeneity that efforts to make everyone in their differences the same and treat everyone the same and bring everyone to an equal level. And there's a lot of concepts tied in with one another with that need to be unpacked. And I think kind of taking a look at two different words that are, kind of folded into that kindred concept are really important. One is equality and one is equity. So shout out to Tiffany Young. She's the diversity and equity director for the Washoe County School District here in Reno, Nevada. The example she gives to show the difference between those two concepts is a shoe store. So equality is when you go into the shoe store and everybody receives the same size shoe, which, of course, for everyone sitting at this table, that would not work. My feet are very small. Everybody else's feet are very large at this table. That's not going to work. We have to acknowledge that we have different size feet. We're different people. We have differences, and that's okay. Equity is going to the shoe store and everybody receives a pair of shoes that fits them.
Right.
Everybody gets shoes. And of course, coming to the table in our society, not everybody is receiving the same shoes or any shoes.
Right.
And so that's really the issue. That's really the problem. And so when we're saying that we want to celebrate what we have in common or what is the same about us, it's not to say that we're ignoring differences. It's to say that we want to emphasize dignity. And when I say that, I mean the God-given dignity that each one of us has as being created in the image of God.
Right.
That, the Bible teaches that, men and women were people, human beings, were created in God's image. And that is something that is dignified and is deserving of dignity. And that's what we see as being the thread that pulls all of us in our differences together, is the fact that even in our differences, we're dignified. And I think that it's important to note that God in his creative power and in his creativity made us all different on purpose. Mm-hmm. And that his grace is in the book of 1 Peter, which is in the New Testament of the Bible. God's grace is described as being varied. And so we want to celebrate differences and what makes us distinctive, while still honoring the fact that God created us with dignity.
Right. Like that reminds me of like the early church in the book of Acts and in the epistles. Like one of the things that was most revolutionary about that movement was that people of different social classes were dining together and having all things in common. Yep. It wasn't necessarily that their message was revolutionary, though it was. It wasn't necessarily that they were, they weren't like standing on the street corners preaching fire and brimstone gospel. That's not what turned Rome upside down. It was that people of different social classes who had lots of things different between them, lots of reasons to not congregate, lots of reasons to not, join hands. They were doing that. And it was just a total upheaval of what was a broken system, a system that was very dedicated to rewarding the people in power and pushing the people who weren't. So, that's what the church, I think, does and has been doing and should continue to do, right? And just as we continue, talking about this podcast and what we hope to accomplish, we're going to continue to have conversations. And that is really for a couple of reasons. One is a conversation is the way we ingest information these days. If you turn on the news or any other kind of source of information, you'll typically see two or more people talking about what they're seeing. And so a lot of times, long form speeches and things like that don't land with us as much anymore. So when we're trying to tackle some of these concepts and these realities that we're going to be talking about, I'm thinking that a conversation is going to be a lot easier for us to engage with that material. And the second reason why we're going to continue to have these conversations is because we want to take a page out of Jesus's playbook and circumvent our logical defense systems. So when Jesus told parables in the Bible, he would often, he would be very mysterious about it. He would just kind of give some details about some story, usually about plants or something like that. And people would be like, yeah, I'm tracking. Okay. And what you don't realize is that Jesus is getting you to disagree with yourself before you realize you're doing it. And then he lifts the curtain and then you're like, oh my gosh, I see. It's like, David and Jonathan, if you're familiar with the story from the Old Testament, when he sleeps with Bathsheba and gets her husband killed, and then Jonathan, his best friend's like, what would you do if there was a man that stole a little lamb from a
Nathaniel?
What did I say? Nathaniel, Jonathan.
Or Nathan? Yeah.
Well, I don't know what I said. Anyway,
the prophet.
The point is, he says, he says, well, what would you do if this rich guy stole this poor guy's only little lamb? He's like, well, I would kill the man and make him payback restitution. He's like, you're the man. And David's like, oh my gosh, and his head explodes. Right? Like that's the point of parables is to get us to introduce concepts that we wouldn't normally entertain because of our preconceived logical defenses. And obviously we're not going to be telling parables on this podcast. That's not the idea. But I think a conversation does the same thing. When we're dialoguing about something and someone's not just spitting a bunch of information at you about this is what you should think and this is what you should believe and this is what is true and what isn't true. That's not the idea behind a conversation. A conversation is an exchange of ideas. This is what I think. What do you think about that? And this is a new concept for us all to explore. And so we're hoping that for you, the listener, that as we're having these conversations, you would be able to engage with them in an open-minded and present way, so that you don't feel the need to defend whatever it is. I mean, that's the reality. Is as we grow and as we change, we have to become used to changing our minds. That's just what it is to become a mature person. The propensity as a human being is definitely to try to get security in what you can know, and to decide this is the way the world works and this is the way things should work. But I think that there's a lot more freedom in being free to think differently if you so choose. If you so realize that something has changed your conviction, you should be able to think differently about that without ramification. Elizabeth, you were talking to me a lot about that normalizing of changing your mind. Would you?
Yes, I think I might touch on that a little bit later as well, but I think especially, I'm 33, Mike's 33 as well, and I will not disclose KB's age unless she chooses.
It can be disclosed. You just don't know it.
Busted.
36.
Cool. Anyway, I feel like there's a very, I'm sure we all have parents or people in the generation above us. I feel like I've witnessed that it's scary to change your mind. And if you change your mind, that means you were wrong. And that means you made mistakes, or you taught your kids wrong, or you taught your kids something terrible that, affects their futures. Or you made deep convictions, or you made decisions out of those deep convictions that maybe were wrong. And that shame is kind of intense. I'm experiencing that even as a 33-year-old. And I can't imagine, being a 60-year-old or a 90-year-old that has to change my mind on something that I maybe, had a tight fist on for my whole life. I feel like I have very few years left to do something different. I understand why people fight tooth and nail on convictions just because it's the way that it's always been. And I think that's why I have a lot of compassion on that and understand it. But at the same time, we have to normalize it at some level. It doesn't mean weakness to change your mind. It's a strength. It's a humility. It's in ways of in Christian speak, I feel like it's a willingness to listen to the Spirit as the person who does know all and doesn't have to change his mind because he knows the truth in the first place. It's that willingness to listen to him as the person who knows. And also just as individuals, whether or not someone is choosing to listen or believes in the Spirit, it's a humility that I think that we all need to be comfortable with. And we've been talking about this a lot too on my staff, that discomfort is not danger. And that's, I think, the big thing that keeps people from being able to change their mind. It's uncomfortable because it means you're expecting, or you're admitting that you were wrong, or you're admitting that maybe you were racist, or you're admitting maybe you followed the wrong quote unquote doctrine, or whatever that right. is, or you taught the wrong doctrine, right. or whatever. But that discomfort is not danger. That discomfort is something that can and should, I don't use that word very lightly, should be embraced.
Yeah. Right. And I think, with that too, a conversation is a helpful medium to engage those ideas, because especially now, most of the time, the way we receive information as somebody on social media posting some kind of polarizing article that's like, here, read this, and this is how you know you're dumb and why I disagree with you, like, and then as we read that information, all we're looking for, as we scan the article or whatever, is reasons to disagree with it and reasons why, fodder to fire back at the person. And that I see it all the time, especially on social media and even in the news or wherever. It's just like constant, a constant onslaught of anonymity, people not knowing where the information's coming from or not feeling any kind of relational tie to the person they're responding to. And so it's just like a fight. It's just a big fight. But a conversation, I think, if you sit down with somebody, then it's a lot easier to engage those ideas in a thoughtful and meaningful way. But the reality is not everybody can have a conversation with another person, with the people that actually engage these ideas or believe these ideas or have strong ties to certain concepts or whatever. So the podcast, hopefully, as we continue to have these conversations, will be a way for people who are interested in having these kinds of conversations and having these kinds of dialogues around these ideas to have access to those people, access to those types of conversations that are more open and dignified, like Christine was saying, providing just respect toward one another and getting away from just the craziness of trying to find information on the internet. Everyone's fighting somebody on the internet. It's insane. It's insanity. So hopefully a conversation is a way for us to provide a space for people to explore those ideas in a safe and unguarded environment. Wouldn't you agree? Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to move on to just sort of what the podcast will contain, the kinds of things you can hear about in just a moment. All right. In this section, we're just going to discuss a little bit about what kinds of content we're hoping to generate with the podcast. And I just want to start off by saying really clearly and just in big, bold letters, if you can imagine it, we are not experts on these things.
What?
Like, that's not what we're here to do or to claim is like, I know how things should be thought of, or we know what needs to change about the country or the Christian faith or whatever it is that we're actually discussing with people. The idea is not to claim expertise or to make any kind of authoritative opinions about how things should be and what needs to change or anything like that. But the point is to have a conversation, and as a listener, I just want you to know, as somebody who's listening to my voice right now in the future, that we are not here to tell you why you're wrong, even if we may disagree with some of your thinking, or maybe we agree with some of your thinking. This is not ammunition for you to tell somebody else why they are wrong or anything like that. This is a platform for a conversation. It's just a weird platform because you can't actually talk to the people that we have on here, the guests, right? And so it's a weird hybrid version, especially during a pandemic where you can't actually sit across the table from somebody and actually exchange ideas. It's a version of that you can engage with. But yeah, I think it's really important to say right here and right now that I am not a scholar of the Bible. We are not expert politicians or what social sciences.
KB is.
No. Politic knowers. Is that the appropriate term?
You nailed it.
Nailed it. We're not those. We're not those people. As a host of this podcast, my job is to just ask good questions of the people who are here to share their thoughts and insights and try to get the best information out of that person, right? Try to get their ideas to be as clear as possible so that the listener, you, walk away from the conversation going, I think I understand why they think the things that they do. That's our goal, not to make, like I said, any authoritative claims on what people should think or how they should think or anything like that. And I think it's important to say that because there's going to be a lot of different people on this podcast from a lot of different persuasions, talking about a lot of different things. probably people from different faiths even, or agnostic folks, or, atheist folks or whatever, and then all from different political persuasions and just all over the map, because the idea of the podcast is to get people talking about what is common in human dignity and what is common in the human experience. And so, we wanted to say that just up front as you kind of get ready to receive more episodes from us. And thank you, Bobby. Bobby just delivered me a glass of wine. Bobby's Liz's business partner for Mabel Media, and he's running the cameras and kind of our producer. And we got Eric Laster over here in the corner as well, who's running the mics, the ones and twos.
Like a co-producer.
It's kind of fun to feel like having an audience, because when you're podcasting and recording a podcast, you don't know who's listening, but I know these guys are listening at least.
And they're just our best good friends.
Our bestest good friends.
Yeah.
But speaking of Liz and Bobby having that company together, they, as we mentioned earlier, own a media company, a creative agency, which deals a lot with branding. And we, as we were getting ready to launch this podcast, asked some of the similar questions that Liz asks her clients as they're preparing to brand their organizations. And so we decided to answer some of those questions for our podcast. So we'll just tackle them one at a time and try to get some clarity on what this podcast should do and what it should provide for people. So first, what is the most important message that we need to convey to our audience?
Oh man, I wish I was wittier. I feel like there was a perfect...
Me too.
That was a perfect transition to a joke that I didn't have.
It's okay. The listeners will fill the joke void. Thank you, listeners.
Silence. A moment of silence for the joke void.
So what is
We're going to edit that out.
I doubt it. What is the most important message we need to convey to our audience?
Okay, great. Well, I think we have a few different things that, no, there is, I guess when we answer this question from a branding perspective, there needs to be one answer. And I do think that, I guess maybe you guys can help me develop this a little bit. I think that we don't have to 100% agree on all things to learn and receive wisdom and grow with each other. I would say that's a huge emphasis on what we want all of our listeners to be okay with. That's uncomfortable, because when you hear someone that you don't agree with, especially when it comes to Christianity or Christian living, there is immediately something that kicks in that's like, that is right or wrong, that deserves eternal judgment or does not. There is people's eternal trajectory on the line. And I think that, well, first of all, we're not necessarily having conversations about, I think, potentially maybe some of the very core tenets of Christianity. I mean, maybe we will. I don't know.
I think we probably will.
Yeah.
And that's important. It's important to do that is because, if you're pigeonholed into your way of thinking and never exposed to other ideas, then how confident can you be in your conviction,
Yeah.
And so it's not a reason to upturn the things that are foundational to the Christian faith or whatever it is. But it is important to visit those things, I think.
Yeah. And maybe we need to do something on that, but I don't know. I think that the podcast that's not the point. The point is not that we try to defend everything. Yeah. The point is that we are trying to, see the dignity in every single human being and embrace that and their perspective and understand that there's different perspectives. All three of us are white 30-year-olds. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of other perspectives out there. We're all kind of like middle class. I mean, we're really, three of us are pretty specific.
Just right down the middle. Just, like a split hog.
Yeah. So we're going to need to get some other perspectives, and we're not going to maybe agree, but that's not the point. The point is the dignity. The point is normalizing, changing our minds as we receive new information that is helpful, less harmful, more loving, and new facts that maybe even allow us to accept new truth.
Mm-hmm. Oh no! But I mean, if it's truth, right? It's what you want, right? As a Christian person, I think that if it's true, then it is of God, right? And so, if it's true, I should receive it, whether or not that lines up with my preconceived notions. I think that there's a reality to where, as a Christian person, I'm trying to reconcile things that are true with what I see in the Scripture and what I, feel to be, resonating with the Spirit of God. But truth is truth, and it should be embraced, regardless of who it comes from. Which is part of the normalizing of changing your mind, is being ready and willing to receive truth from wherever it comes from, which the Proverbs, in the Bible talk quite a bit about that, is being able to receive a rebuke, whether it's from a foolish person or a rich man or whatever. I mean, that's the Mike Mumford paraphrased version, obviously, but being able to receive it,
The MP.
The MMPV. My mom had a Mazda van when I was a kid called an MPV.
Oh, I remember that thing.
Yeah, it was tight.
I mean, not the exact van that you're speaking
of course, because we didn't know each other back then.
No, not at all.
Yeah, different states.
But yes.
Yeah.
I know the car of which you speak.
Yeah, we took it down to the beach all the time. It was so awesome and janky, and it smelled like egg salad sandwiches because that's what we ate at the beach all the time. I love that thing. I miss it.
There's dignity in that, Michael.
Okay.
There is.
Side note, Mike legitimately asked me 2 days ago,
What?
3 days ago. So babe, how would you feel about getting a van?
I mean, I just want to know. All truth is God's truth, right? Like, we got to explore it as an idea, as a concept at least.
You got to get out of the echo chamber of the midsize SUV.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're basically driving a tall van. That's what that is. That's what it is. That's all it is. Okay, so second question that we need to tackle is, what is our psychographic? What kind of mindset of a person are we trying to reach?
Yeah, I will take a stab at this one. And I think I just want to say, for the record, and of course the internet is forever,
right?
That these ideas that you're hearing from us, our intention is not to bring you fully formed ideas and to bring you fully formed convictions about A, B, and C that you can take to the bank. I just mixed so many metaphors there. But the idea is that we're working on these concepts. We're wrestling with these concepts in real time, and that's what you're listening to. I think that's part of the beauty of what we're doing, and I think part of the message we're conveying is that it's in progress, it's in process, and you are with us in it, which I think is really cool. So with that, our target audience is people who are in process, who are a work in progress, who are working through ideas, who are working through concepts, working through their beliefs, and want to hear some different perspectives. I think that we've talked about social media. We've talked about some of the ways that we can get into our own echo chamber.
Right.
And of course, the fancier term for that is confirmation bias. We're not often looking for viewpoints that are different than ours. We're not often looking for perspectives that are varied from ours. We're looking to confirm what we already think and what our preconceived notions already are. Mm-hmm. But who we're talking to, who we're talking with, who we're pleading with even, is are people who are looking to make change and to challenge what those preconceived notions are for them, and looking to explore what the perspectives and stories are of other people. And I think, from our context, all three of us, as we can attest from 30 minutes ago, all of us came to the Christian faith at a pretty young age, relatively speaking. For more than half our lives, we've been part of the Christian faith. And what we've observed as being part of that Christian faith for decades now is that there is a certain thread to American evangelicalism that we have each had to reckon with and each had to confront our own dissonance with as the years have gone on. And I don't necessarily mean you know, core tenets of the Christian faith, though we are wrestling with those, and to Mike's point, should wrestle with those. But a lot of the cultural, the culture around the faith is stuff that we've had to wrestle with, that we've had to address in our own lives, address the dissonance that we're experiencing. And I would say that's a huge part of what we're doing too. And we want to talk to people who are looking at American Christianity and saying, I don't know about that.
Yep.
I mean, because there are some very important questions to ask.
Sure.
And those are for subsequent episodes, obviously. Sure. But, you know, we have questions about equity. We have questions about who the dominant culture is. We have questions about why the church is so segmented according to race. We have questions about why, you know, LGBTQ plus people don't feel welcome to come in the door. We have questions about these things, and we have questions that we want to wrestle with. And so that's what we're here to do. And people who want to wrestle with those questions with us, that's who we want along the way.
Yeah, and I think that's wide open too, because like while we are coming from a Christian background, that is not necessarily a Christian conversation. You know, that is, everybody has to reckon with the fact that Jesus lived, died, whatever, resurrected, whatever you believe actually happened at that moment. All of Western culture is shaped by this reality. And so anybody who lives in Western culture is a part of this conversation, whether they know it or want to be, you know? And so in true form of Jesus being an open, absolutely open door, you know, like he says, behold, I come and I stand at the door and knock. Whoever opens the door, I will come in and eat with them. And I invite them. And so like Jesus is a truly open door, invites everybody to the table and everybody to have the conversation, to figure out what to make of him. You know, he's the only people he excludes are the people that think they don't need him. You know, they're the ones that think that he's cramping their style, and that his openness and inclusion is kind of breaking their system. You know, so this, hopefully, the podcast, while obviously we're coming from a Christian perspective, can be applicable and helpful to you if you're not a Christian or aren't familiar with the Christian faith. We definitely want this to be a place where you feel like your questions are being asked and answered. So we're actually going to be able to do that. We'll have Q&R episodes coming up in the future. We'll give you an email to send emails to. I just blew Liz's mind with the R part of Q&R. Q and what?
We don't have the answer.
Because I don't have an answer. I got a response.
response.
Yeah, exactly.
Repeat.
Revelation.
Yes.
Questions and
relevation.
Relevation.
Revelations.
So anyway, our hope is that, you know, this podcast is the thing that serves people of lots of different demographics, just people who are curious about Jesus, curious about spirituality, curious about, you know, human experience and what other people are experiencing and where other people are coming from. People who are wanting to have a conversation, don't have access to those conversations. So that's what we hope to do. What makes us unique amid the sea of conversations amongst evangelicals and Christian culture?
I think part of it is that we don't have a thesis statement, if I had to summarize it. We are open to changing our minds. We are open to going on a journey with the people that we have conversations with. We don't, I even hesitate with like a tagline in some senses, like, because it feels like a thesis. Totally. I mean, there is some thesis in some way that, like, you know, we want this to be a conversation, but we don't have an agenda.
Right.
So that's how I'd simply put that.
No, I think that's really wise. And, you know, I follow this scholar, Tim Gombis, Christine, obviously. Freaking Gombis. We love Tim Gombis. And Tim, if you listen to this episode one day, just know how thankful we are for all of your hard work.
You're in my text messages constantly.
Yeah, I'm like, have you listened to Tim's last podcast? Anyway, And one of the things that Tim he was recollecting about him sitting on a board of he works at he teaches at Grand Rapids Theological Seminary, if I'm not mistaken, and he was on a hiring committee for one of the new faculty members, and one of the other folks on the hiring committee said to the interviewee, said, I want to quote it correctly, said, "What do you see being the two main threats opposing Christian orthodoxy in the near future?" That's not a quote. That's my, digested version.
MPV.
That's the MPV. You'll find it a lot of times that there's an MPV to something. Mike, I don't even know what it's called now. I messed it up. Mike,
I feel like we're missing some letters.
Michael Mumford perspective version.
Perspective
Okay, yes.
Paraphrased version. Anyway,
That's it.
but he said, what are the two main threats opposing Christian orthodoxy? And Tim was just saying man, what a weird way to think about the future of the Christian faith. What's threatening us versus, what are two really exciting new perspectives that we need to explore as, from a theology perspective, new ways of doing hermeneutics, new ways of looking at the history of the New and Old Testament. Like what is new and exciting and cutting edge right now that we need to explore as a faith community versus, what's coming at us that we need to defend so that we can stay the same. And I just thought that was really, really insightful. And that's hopefully where we can also continue to tread in that direction with this podcast is we're not necessarily here to defend stuff. God can defend himself. Jesus needs no defense. C.S. Lewis, I think it said that God is a lion. You don't need to defend a lion. You just need to, what is the rest of the quote? Do you remember?
Just let him eat stuff.
Just let him eat. Yeah, just let him eat stuff.
C.S. Lewis said, yes.
Right. I think it's you only need let him out of the cage.
Yeah, something like
something
that.
Something
That's
poetic
better.
like that. But yeah, the Christianity, the thing that Jesus started, whatever that was, whatever it's become, the thing that Jesus started will not stop. That's going to be, forever building until he returns. And so he doesn't need to be defended, but I think the church does need to be exposed to new ideas and needs to be open to receiving, wisdom from any source that it can come from. And I think that's kind of what Tim was getting at too. Just really struck me the other day when I was listening to his podcast. So as we continue to make episodes, just a couple things that you, our listeners, can expect. We're going to be doing interviews. So I'm going to be obviously hosting a lot of these episodes. Some of them will be hosted by other folks, but I think most of them will be me because it's kind of part of my job right now. And but we're going to be doing interviews with some folks. Some of them will be Christian folks. Some of them won't. Some of them will be from other persuasions, whether it's political, gender and sexuality, faith background, that kind of stuff. We're going to have some book discussions, and we'll be talking about what books we're going to be reading ahead of time in advance, so that if you want to read those books along the way and be thinking about those things and maybe send in questions, you're more than welcome to do that. But as we get to those book discussions, we're going to be discussing current events. Obviously, as you're probably aware, the world is just in upheaval right now. And if you're listening from 2021, please tell me, send some message back to me that it's a beautiful and peaceful place. But I mean, in the middle of 2020, it's just upheaval, and there's a lot to talk about, and I think a lot that the church particularly needs to respond to, but that as we as humans need to have some kind of engagement with, and those are the things that we're going to be talking about as well. We'll have Q&R episodes, so we'll have a platform for you guys to get your questions in. I'll put our email at the end of this episode so that you know who to write to. And then last but certainly not least, we're just going to continue to explore the Christian Bible and looking at certain passages that just need to be explored. And some of it will be kind of arbitrary, to be honest, just like, hey, let's pick a passage and go for it. And some of it will be timely, I think. I think maybe even the ones that we think are arbitrary will be timely on accident. So we're just gonna do that. We're gonna continue to have conversations. We're going to try to release one episode per week, And if obviously, I mean, it's been very clearly said so far, but we are coming from a Christian perspective. But that does not mean that we're creating a Christian product, right? This is not an American evangelical Christian product like a T-shirt or like. Did you ever guys listen to that cover band, the Apologetics, back in the day?
Oh my gosh.
Oh no.
They did like if you've never heard of the Apologetics, please go look them up. They did like a bunch of like cover songs of like pop 90s alternative music, and it was all like Bible themed. Like, do you guys remember this is a story of a girl?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Well, they had one about Noah and the flood, and it
Yeah.
was like, this is a story of a squirrel.
Yes.
Right.
And
Yes.
God made it rain and drown the whole world, or something like
Yes.
that.
It's like Weird Al, but
Yeah.
not as great.
Also,
Yeah.
I remember going to Christian bookstores as a kid, and you'd go through the CD section, and it'd be like,
the
if you
compact
like
disc section.
Red Hot Chili Peppers, this is the Christian version
Yeah.
of Red Hot Chili
Totally.
Peppers, or you like Blink-182, this is the Christian version.
Right.
And I ate that shoot up.
I would like to keep the explicit label off of our podcast episodes, please. Elizabeth, keep a lid on it.
I know.
No, but I did too, and that's the thing is that there's definitely a whole market for American Christian evangelical like wares. But that's not what this is. This is we're obviously coming from a Christian perspective, but hopefully this is not one of those things that's just kind of like tossed in with the other the $5 Walmart bin of Christian stuff that's out there. So that's kind of what you can be expecting coming from us in the future. Like I said, if you have questions, we're going to tell you we're going to give you our final answer on what email you can send that to briefly. All right. Okay, so we're pretty much done here. I wanted to wrap up with any final thoughts, anything that has come to mind that needs to be said or has not been yet said.
You know, I know we've remarked on this several times now, but I love the fact that the person who's listening to this, including us, is in the future and they know more than we do right now. That is kind of blowing my mind at the moment.
It's profound.
That, we are limited in what we have, what we know right now at 10:07 p.m. on whatever day this is, September 16th, 2020. And anybody who is listening to this after that day knows more than we do and has encountered more truth than we have and has had their hearts changed more than we have.
Oof.
And that's pretty freaking great. Also, when I looked and saw that it was 10 o'clock, I immediately thought of the PSA from back in the day that said, it's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?
They're sleeping upstairs.
Yeah, yours are.
Yeah.
Mine are in the heart of God. Or maybe they're alive. We don't know.
Oh my gosh. Elizabeth, final thoughts?
This is new to me.
Okay. Podcasting or?
Well, I don't even listen to podcasts.
Right. It's true.
So this is new. Bear with me. I have a lot to say. I'm kind of insecure about saying it. I'm really excited to say it. The end.
Yeah, that's good. I think you're not the only one that's going to feel that way, especially as we continue to have guests. Hopefully we're going to challenge, not challenge, it's the wrong word, explore some really, heated, hot button type stuff. That's the hope, right? Because that's the stuff that really needs to be talked about and won't be in the public sphere, or if it is, it's just like I said, it's just a big fight. And so I think that you are in good company. And hopefully over time, we'll get to hear some of those insights of yours. I think my final thoughts, I'm just happy that you're listening to this. I think it's, if you will bear with us as we kind of get our bearings on how to record podcasts, I think there'll be some very helpful conversations forthcoming. And I think that if you are willing to engage with thoughts outside of your sphere, that you will be developed into a more complete person. That's our hope. That's what we want to accomplish for ourselves. That's what we want to provide for our listeners. And that's what we hope, will inevitably just happen to the Christian church as we encounter the world that God has put us in, year after year. So if you want to participate in our Q&R episodes as they come up, and if you want to, join in the book discussions, you can email us at...
Something that's in the description.
It'll be in the description. Look
at those show notes.
Yeah, look at the show notes. There will be a description in the show notes that has the email. I was going to just use my personal email, but I feel like it'd probably be better to pick one in post and put it in there. But yeah, you can look in the show notes for an email address that you can send those questions to and those insights from the book. The first book we're going to be tackling is The Blue Parakeet by Scott McKnight. And it's a fantastic book about hermeneutics and just how to read the Bible and how to apply what the Bible says to our lives. Fantastic. I can't support it enough.
10 out of 10 would recommend.
10 out of 10. That's what the kids are saying these days.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, totally. 10 out of 10 would recommend. Fantastic book. If you read it and you have any insights about it or any questions about it, feel free to shoot it into the email in the description. And I think that's about it. That's a wrap for our first episode. Let me just say this. May God bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he show you favor and give you peace.